The war in Afghanistan is now over. The fourth president has faced the issue whether and when to end this war. When I was running for president, I made a commitment to the American people that I would end this war. Today, I went to Afghanistan in the first place. What is the vital national interest? To those asking for a third decade of war in Afghanistan, I ask, what is the vital national interest? In my view, we only have one. Make sure Afghanistan can never be used again to launch an attack on our homeland. Remember why we went to Afghanistan in the first place? Because we were attacked by Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda September 11th, 2001. And they were based in Afghanistan. We delivered justice to bin Laden on May 2nd, 2011, over a decade ago. Al Qaeda was decimated. I respectfully suggest you ask yourself this question. We've been attacked on September 11, 2001 from Yemen instead of Afghanistan. Would we have ever gone to war in Afghanistan? Even though the Taliban controlled Afghanistan in the year 2001? I believe the honest answer is no. That's because we had no vital interest in Afghanistan other than to prevent an attack on America's homeland and their friends. That's true today. We succeeded in what we set out to do in Afghanistan over a decade ago. And we stayed for another decade. It was time to end this war. Since March, we reached out 19 times to Americans in Afghanistan with multiple warnings and offers to help them leave Afghanistan, all the way back as far as March. After we started the evacuation 17 days ago, we did initial outreach and analysis and identified around 5,000 Americans who had decided earlier to stay in Afghanistan but now wanted to leave. Our Operation Allied Rescue ended up getting more than 5,500 Americans out. We got out thousands of citizens and diplomats from those countries that went into Afghanistan with us to get bin Laden. We got out locally employed staff of the United States Embassy and their families, totaling roughly 2,500 people. We got thousands of Afghan translators and interpreters and others who supported the United States out as well. Now we believe that about 100 to 200 Americans remain in Afghanistan with some intention to leave. Most of those who remain are dual citizens, longtime residents who had earlier decided to stay because of their family roots in Afghanistan. The bottom line, 90% of Americans in Afghanistan who wanted to leave were able to leave. For those remaining Americans, there is no deadline. We remain committed to get them out if they want to come out. Secretary of State Blinken is leading the continued diplomatic efforts to ensure safe passage for any American, Afghan partner, or foreign national who wants to leave Afghanistan.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
around the nation. Waldorf Nation, everybody, welcome to the show. It's Tuesday, important day, August 31st. And you might have heard at the top of the show that I was just playing some of Joe Biden's speech about getting out of Afghanistan. So, look, it's a momentous day. The war's over. Like, we're out. We are finally out of Afghanistan, and that's important. That's kind of a big deal. Kind of a big fucking deal. Hey, good. It's over. At least that one's over. And I think that this is something that this is going to be remembered for quite some time. And I'm glad I'm here to kind of share that with you. As many mistakes that were made in Afghanistan, not just, over the last month, but also over the last 20 years. And by the way, there was a report. I know I'm just kind of diving right into it and getting into tangents here. But I read a report yesterday how the Trump administration basically, as well as Stephen Miller, basically tried to block as many Afghan citizens, people who were, helpful to the United States military during our occupation, tried to prevent them from getting out. They would put bureaucratic red tape. They would slow down. They even stopped the processing of visas. And so also they could keep Afghans from getting out efficiently because they didn't want them in the country. Again, Trump and Stephen Miller sit there and go on racist rants during meetings about, trying to speed up the timetable to try to get some of these people out. So don't at all be surprised that part of the botched pullout from Afghanistan was due to the Trump administration. Wow, the white supremacists stopped the Afghans from getting out. I know, big shocker, right? But it still deserves to be reported, needs to be reported because it's not being reported. A lot of what mainstream news is really harping on is how Biden failed. Oh, Biden failed. And it's, of course, because mainstream news wants another forever war because it's really good for the military-industrial complex, really good for the defense contractors, it's really good for their ratings. So, again, mainstream media has never met a war that they didn't like and didn't want to cheerlead for. And so they seem to have forgotten to report on the Trump administration's failures in getting out of Afghanistan, which, by the way, they're pointing at Biden, right? But they would have done the same thing to Donald Trump, of course. Probably even more viciously. The fact that Donald Trump and Joe Biden were correct on this policy issue in getting her out of Afghanistan. Biden's not the one who secretly signed a surrender, then failed to start getting people out. That's also true. And, it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, they signed a deal with the Taliban. Also turns out, today there was another deal that came out, and this time it was signed by the Biden administration with the Taliban to basically escort Americans out. So groups of Americans would get told where and when to meet, and then they would meet up with members of the Taliban who would then escort them to the airfields to get them out. And, of course, they would go to the airport with their Taliban escort until they, run up to basically people, Americans that are guarding the airbase, and then the Taliban would turn them over and say, here you go. You can go ahead and leave. Now, of course, with the Taliban, you don't know how many people were actually turned back. You don't know how many people, visas were rejected, in paperwork, they didn't care, and all that. And, of course, how many Afghans might have gotten turned away as well, because, again, the Taliban has their biometric data. But there was that deal that did come out today, earlier in the news, where they talked about how Biden had said, okay, we're gonna negotiate something with the Taliban for you to escort our people out. And look, they got a lot of people out. 90% of everybody that wanted out got out. And there are still people that are left, obviously, and those people need to get out as well. May have not been the best exit, but there was an exit. And there's no way, of course, Biden will win in any way with mainstream media or with the repugnants or Republicans. Yeah, shocker. It's almost as if they're, no matter what he does, ideologically opposed to him and will never give an inch. So there's that. Good to focus on the positive. Glad we got out at the very least. Absolutely. 20 years too late. And again, if you want to criticize Biden, under the Obama administration for not pushing harder to end that war during his time as vice president, sure, definitely do that. Also, you can criticize Biden for his vote to authorize military force for Iraq and Afghanistan. Totally fair game on that. But you also have to give credit to Biden for pulling out. And if you're going to give Biden credit for crafting the plan to pull out, then you also need to give Trump credit for that same thing. And I think that's asking too much from both sides, honestly. Asking too much from Republicans who are now totally against leaving Afghanistan, and asking too much for liberals, of course, to give Donald Trump credit for anything positive that he might have done. So, corporate media wants forever war, no surprise. Yeah. So, all right. So, nonetheless, it is a momentous day. I do hope that this 20-year disaster will get put into the history books and shown to be the disaster that it always has been. That's my hope. But of course, I think the media is going to try to rewrite history on this one and show, oh, it wasn't so bad. No, it was terrible. We left Afghanistan like I leave family holiday dinners, angry, defeated, with a loss of dignity. We lost as soon as we got in there. Let's be honest with that. I'm Christina. Hey, I'm Katrina. Everybody give her a follow. Welcome to the show. Check out her stream. Like I said, welcome. It's going to be a fun show. Everybody check out Christina on Twitch, where she does stream. Good. And also, those of you who are curious about the Twitch thing, it is twitch.tv/Jeff_Waldorf. So go check us out. Follow us there. Bezos Bucks, very helpful. As far as everybody else is concerned, welcome YouTube, welcome Facebook. Already, hey, let me just read this super chat that I got here. Oh, I already did. Corporate media wants war, no surprise. For sure. But thank you for that very kind super chat. All right. That said, we have other stuff that I want to talk about. We're going to go talk about COVID, of course. We got more election fraud conspiracies. We got ex-analysts versus Fox News. We got Capitol rioters, of course. But then we're going to have some fun. I've been doing some disastrous stories about school boards. Now here's a fun one. And I think you'll enjoy it. Do it. Former President Donald Trump was recently on Fox Business, where they apparently never talk about business, and basically straight up claimed that he had saved millions of people from COVID-19. And now this is, of course, after a string of incoherent lies, of which I am to show you. Take a look.
How do you feel about opening up, having a freedom day like Britain?
We've got to open up. We've got to open up our country. Our country is artificially induced. If you look at the money that's being poured into our country through different things, including the Fed, including deals that are being made in Congress where they have a majority, so they're able to pass things like that fake infrastructure deal where it's 11% infrastructure, and even that's not real infrastructure, a lot of it. And you go 1.2 trillion. Now they want 3.5 trillion. And someday that whole act is going to come to a very bad crashing end. It's very bad. But open up our country. Open it up.
Okay. There's a lot in there. I told you, incoherent. So let's start with this. Our country is being artificially induced by the money pouring through different things. What? What are you even talking about? If you know what he's talking about, please let me know. Okay. We're getting money from everywhere. Are you talking about the Fed? He said something about injecting money from the Fed. Well, when's the last time the Fed did quantitative easing? As far as I know, it was last year when the banks were failing and we're about to crash under Donald Trump as a result of COVID-19. And look, I'm not blaming Donald Trump for the market crash, okay? That's, again, a result of COVID-19. That said, he does deserve partial blame for not handling COVID-19 very well. And of course, you know, not being honest about the effects that COVID-19 would have on the United States and of course, generally our economy. But anyway, let's go to infrastructure. So infrastructure, big surprise, he has no idea what he's talking about. There are two different bills right now. One is a bipartisan bill that comes out to about $1.2 trillion. That's negotiated between, you know, Democrats, Republicans, so it's bipartisan, and it had enough support to pass the Senate with Republican votes. So now in that, again, $1.2 trillion, about half of which comes from repurposed COVID money. So there's not an additional huge investment of cash. Okay. And so, all right. Now, that's still a significant investment in actual physical infrastructure. So roads, bridges, public transportation, broadband, you know, because internet is incredibly important to have. I mean, obviously, look, I'm the guy that's doing news online, so yes, internet's incredibly important for me. It's also incredibly important for a lot of businesses now, especially ones that are doing work outside the office. Very, very important to do investments in broadband. Not only that, but you have upgrades to airports, ports, waterways, rebuilding the electric grid. God knows Texas needs that. Replacing lead pipes in places like Flint so they actually have clean water. And look, you can go through a lot of the reports about lead pipes, and it's not just Flint, it's cities all across the United States that have old lead pipe infrastructure that needs to be replaced. And look, in this $1.2 trillion bill, it was actually watered down quite a bit. You didn't get as much of an investment in a lot of these infrastructure projects that they were really hoping to get. Okay, but sure, only 11% infrastructure. Where did you even get that figure? You pulled it out of your butt. Now, the $3.5 trillion infrastructure, okay, now that's different. So that's the reconciliation bill. That actually, and it's a blueprint right now, so it's not even in it has not even evolved to its final form, which is likely to be probably worse, let's be honest. But it aims to include things like human infrastructure, meaning childcare, healthcare, even, you know, climate change, which, hey, has effect on us humans. So now I say that this is a blueprint that's probably going to get watered down because you already have corporate lobbyists that are trying to say, ooh, no, too much on that. We can't have that. Nope. Let's reduce the spending. Let's reduce the tax rates on capital gains. Let's water this down as much as we can. So that said, he has no idea what he's talking about. Obviously. He has no idea what's in either bill because he didn't read it. It's 2,700 pages. Just the one bipartisan bill is 2,700 pages. And you know Donald Trump, he's a one-pager kind of guy. Remember, and this is one of the funniest stories to come out of the Trump administration, in my opinion. He had to, since he has no attention span, he had to have policy chopped up into bits, into tweet-length segments, with his name peppered throughout them, so that he would pay attention to what he's reading. One-pager kind of guy. he'd get bored. He'd get bored because he's not interested in reading, not interested in working. No, not even a one-page cliff note. No, half a page at most, filled with maps and killer graphics. So he kind of seems like the wrong person to talk about infrastructure, and basically what he's doing is regurgitating stuff that he saw on Fox News, which, of course, Fox Business. So now let's get to COVID. He had more to say on that. Now we get to the more bonkers part.
You know, it's interesting that states that have been very open or more open have done better than the ones that are closed in terms of COVID itself. And we did a great job on COVID, including the fact that I got a vaccine done in less than 9 months, which would have taken 5 years. So I believe in the vaccine. I'm the one that got them to get it done. Without me, you wouldn't have it for 5 years, and you would have had millions of people throughout the world dead. You would have lost millions and millions of people. But with all of that said, I recommend people take it.
I mean, at least he recommends people take it, but then also had mentioned that he is against mandates. Yeah. But, oh, look at me. I saved millions of people. No, you didn't. You saved absolutely no one. You didn't work in the lab. You sat around tweeting about how masks are bad and how, oh, you should take hydroxychloroquine, or maybe you could inject bleach. A little bit of that. It'll be fine. No, you know who did the real work? Scientists, doctors. They developed the vaccine on technology that's actually been around for decades. mRNA vaccines have been the topic of research since the 1990s. And in 2005, to give you a little timeline, in 2005, there was a breakthrough in developing synthetic RNA. So this is RNA-based medicine. And they figured out how to do that and to do it safely and inject it safely into cells. Okay. And in 2014, Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, a researcher with the National Institute of Health in the United States, worked on a coronavirus biology and vaccine development. Dr. Corbett and colleagues studied the coronaviruses, including the signature spike protein and the role it could play in vaccine development. And of course, that led to what we have today. So no, you didn't do this in 9 months. The vaccine has actually been in development for years with the underlying science for decades. And that is thanks to forward-thinking scientists who are concerned about coronaviruses. Like, for example, SARS, and as well as Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS, in 2012. Those were coronaviruses that they had studied and thought something like that could happen again. We should really look into this mRNA technology. But you've got this asshole, Donald Trump, trying to steal the credit. You know, they're always trying to steal valor from everybody else's achievements. Oh, did you do this? No, you didn't. I did it. It was me. It was all me. I'm very, very tremendous. I came up with it. I did the best. I saved millions of people. No, it only happened under your term. You had nothing to do with it. Okay? Now, your administration did smartly direct money, funding, towards getting the vaccine out. But as I've mentioned in previous segments, a lot of that was also a shit show. Yeah. So, now, as far as states that opened up that are doing better, you mentioned that. Well, doing better is pretty subjective, I should say. Depends on your metric. As far as like, oh, if you're doing better economically because you have the businesses that are open, I guess. But when it comes to people dying, when it comes to people getting sick and clogging up hospitals, not doing so well. In fact, Republican-controlled states like Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Florida, and Arkansas have a total of less than 10% left of their ICU bed capacity. Not good. They're getting slammed with COVID patients. Why? Well, because people aren't getting vaccinated. Because Donald Trump had originally played on anti-vaxxer tropes, fears, spread that and did not encourage use of the vaccine and encouraged these so-called miracle cures, alternative treatments, again, the hydroxychloroquines and the other things like that, and now the ivermectins, and generally did not do anything to help and helped make this situation worse. Even though he himself has already been vaccinated, it's too late. He played on these conspiracies, spread these conspiracies, and now, well, the monster has gotten away from him. Who knew that it would escape? And he also, as I mentioned, open it up. Open it up. Well, he also says, well, let's not do mandates. I'm against mandates. Well, if you do a mandate, you could actually open it up with less restrictions and not have people clog up hospitals. I know he doesn't care about the hospital. Oh, I don't care if it's those people. Who gives a crap, right? I just want to open it up and not actually do anything to make things safe. Well, we're trying to make things safe by doing a mandate. That's it. And by the way, open what up? We're pretty much already opened up. The only thing is that you have mask requirements for schools, which are open now, and you have the possibility of a vaccine passport for certain businesses, including, by the way, Fox News. We're not even closed. We never really had a proper lockdown. It's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So you could see the rest of that interview wasn't any much different. He sat there and lied almost for 2 straight minutes. And that's just in the clips that I showed you. The rest of the interview, full of fabrications, stealing credit, blaming Democrats for failures, on and on and on and on. And that's pretty much it. That's all you're going to get from this guy. Why they keep having him on, well, I'll explain in another segment. Because it turns out there's only one reason, and that's ratings. He's got the best ratings, the greatest ratings. All right. Moving on, let's go to the next one. Kraken lawyer Sidney Powell recently sat down to a fun interview with the Australian broadcast company, so ABC. Now, reporter Sarah Ferguson decided to ask her some questions. One of them is one that we've all been dying to ask Sidney Powell, and she's going to get to that in this next video.
All of the organisations who had the responsibility to check the nature of this election and to verify its results say there was no fraud.
That's the propaganda they're putting out. I disagree with that completely, and we have and will produce additional evidence that shows otherwise.
What you're describing is a massive countrywide fraud involving the FBI, the DOJ, the Department of Homeland Security, the organisations who certify elections, and on, all the way up to the Attorney General, and thousands of local election officials. Are you saying that thousands of Americans participated in a fraud?
I am saying that thousands of Americans had some role in it, knowingly or unknowingly. It was essentially a bloodless coup where they took over the presidency of the United States without a single shot being fired.
Who's they in that sentence?
I don't know who all that they are. I would really like to know the answer to that. But it's a significant number of they. And they knew exactly what they were doing, and they planned it for at least 3 years. This was no accident.
Do you ever hear yourself and think that it sounds ridiculous?
No, I know myself very well. I've been in me a long time. I know my reputation.
Okay. Why did you say that? That's a really weird phrase. I've been in me a long time. So, you know, I know my reputation. Wait, what? Oh, what are you, a lizard person wearing a human skin? Or what are you, some sort of body snatcher or parasite inhabiting a body or alien? What? Why would you say that? That's weird. I mean, again, excuse me for harping on that phrase, but that's, I don't know. That's super weird. I don't know. It struck me as real strange. But seriously, though, he talks about they. Oh, they had a conspiracy and they got together and they, you know, they planned this for 3 years. I don't know who they is, but you know, I don't know. I think she knows. I think she knows. I think she knows who the they is, but she doesn't want to say who they are. Look, as we've talked about and examined on this show plenty of times before, what happens? What is the thing that underpins most right-wing conspiracies? It usually involves a they, right? And it comes back to one thing. They usually refers to the Jews. That's the they. When you hear cabal, when you hear the deep state, generally that tends to mean Jewish people. It undergirds most of their ideology. You dig down far enough into conservative conspiracy theories, it always ends up being anti-Semitic. It's just true. And that isn't to say that there isn't a deep state per se. Oh, no. You can have an argument on that. Because what a deep state really is defined as there's a small group of powerful people that have a lot of power and influence over our government. Well, you can just look at campaign finance and see that is at least partly true. Look at corporate donations, look at super PACs, look at normal PACs, look at billionaires, corporations, as I said. And look, you look at that and you're going to see that there's corruption out in the open. Any wealthy person, any large corporation can hire an army of lobbyists and essentially get whatever they want. We basically live in an oligarchy where the needs of regular working people are generally ignored if they are the opposite of what wealthy donors want. That's the system that we live in. Okay. Now, what they usually and why it's usually against the working class is because it tends to not favor labor. It tends to favor corporate executives. And so they have policy like lower taxes on the rich, less regulation on corporations, things like that, and less labor unions, less environmental regulations, as I mentioned. Those are the things that they generally, corporations and lobbyists, tend to go for. And another thing, of course, is government stability. Government stability means market stability, which means executives as well as investors, the stock market does really well. So all you have to do is just look at that and realize, okay, yeah, we do kind of live in an oligarchy where we have a system of money and politics that's deeply, deeply corrupt that allows people, anybody with money, to come in and buy politicians. Simple, right? Simple. Is that a deep state? No, it's right out in the open. Now, another example of what people could call a deep state is the military-industrial complex. Now, that military-industrial complex aims to keep people in the United States specifically in forever wars. Like, for example, Afghanistan, which we just got out of after 20 years. Donald Trump laid the groundwork for leaving that war, and Biden followed through, and we're out of Afghanistan. That deep state, the military-industrial complex, doesn't really care who's president. We've had wars, forever wars, under Democratic presidents and Republican presidents. So there's really kind of no difference when it comes to the military-industrial complex, whether it be Democrats or Republicans. They're generally kind of the same for the most part. But of course, Biden gets credit for ending that war, as well as Donald Trump in this case. So understand with that context, this is why your conspiracy doesn't make any sense. Trump, policy-wise, wasn't all that different from other Republicans, generally. He cut taxes on the rich. In fact, that's pretty much his only major achievement. Cut taxes for the rich, eliminated regulations, was cruel to immigrants, maybe especially more cruel to immigrants, but nothing too out of the norm for Republicans policy-wise. So where he did differ was his mouth. He couldn't stop saying heinous things, emboldening white nationalists, supporting white nationalists through repetition, of course, of their rhetoric, spreading that around, the embrace of conspiracy theories, which led, of course, unfortunately, to January 6th, all that different stuff. So that's the difference. But none of that is actually why Donald Trump lost. Donald Trump lost because he bungled COVID so badly, so incredibly badly, that the American people were like, oh, fuck this. Hell no. No, I'm going to vote for somebody else, anyone, and it's also why the donors turned on as well. A lot of the corporate donors are like, this is a disaster. We just want to get back to making money. We want to get back to work. And we want to get regular people back in the factories, back in the offices to do the work for us, to make our money. So understand that's what that was about. Okay? Donald Trump was never really that anti-establishment because the establishment worked really well under him as long as it was making money. And for the first couple of years, they made a lot of money. But not until COVID. And that's when he lost everybody. And so now, again, I give you that context because Donald Trump loses as a result of a virus that he himself pointed out as fake. Oh, it's fake. It's a flu. It's not really that big of a deal to open up the country, blah, blah, blah. And it's the same kind of thing from Republicans where you would hear, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I would gladly sacrifice grandma for the almighty stock market. We must sacrifice blood for the stonk gods. We must make line go up. Yeah. Turns out that's a pretty heinous position. But conspiracy theories, okay? And so now on COVID, half of Trump's voters didn't believe in COVID and would regurgitate those Trump conspiracy theories. And so Sidney Powell attached herself to those, and now she has embraced crazy. And that's what it is. Embrace crazy. Later on in that interview, according to Business Insider, Powell had then asked Ferguson if she works for Smartmatic and revealed her confusion about why Ferguson came to interview in her home in Highland Park, Texas. Do you work for Smartmatic? What do you mean? Why would you ask a reporter that? No, look, they wanted to interview her, I would guess because she's a public figure who has openly and loudly spread weirdo conspiracies and tried to get an election thrown out. I mean, for the sole purpose of getting the election thrown out. At, of course, great personal cost to herself. She is being sued with these conspiracies to the tune of billions of dollars for defamation. That's what it is. And she hasn't presented her much vaunted evidence to prove her case. Because at the end of the day, she has no case. She is crazy. Again, a conspiracy like this, such a widespread conspiracy as to stealing a very big election, a presidential election, kind of hard to pull off. Especially if, the more people you have involved, the more improbable it is to actually keep the conspiracy quiet. There always happens to be a paper trail or whistleblowers like that. And none of what they have has panned out. She got nothing. She got nothing. And never will have anything. And so, sorry, but Sidney, your Kraken turned out to be nothing. Nothing but a floppy dead fish. All right. Moving on. We got more. Paranoid Kraken. I know Jesus, he's my neighbor. Nice guy. I would imagine he is. But conservatives would not like him because he is brown-skinned and a Jew. So, and doesn't own an AR-15. Can you imagine? God, they would hate him. They would literally hate Jesus. All right. Anyway, we got more. Go to Fox News. I know. Do we have to? She did walk out, and oh yeah, she did nope out on that interview. That was pretty funny. I should have showed that. All right. A former Fox News military analyst is spilling the tea at what he described was a cultish devotion to former President Donald Trump at the United States' largest cable news network. So I'm going to show you a video here. This is retired Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters. So now Ralph Peters, conservative, I don't agree with him on policy issues, and he had worked as, again, a Fox News military analyst during the Trump administration, and he recently spoke to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation in a wide-ranging interview, and here's what he said about working at Fox News during the time of Trump. Take a look.
The green room over the last several years into the Trump administration, when I left, the guests got more and more bizarre, more distasteful. The green room started to be like the bar scene in the first Star Wars film. And these people are freaks. And then you realize you're one of the freaks.
What do you mean by freaks?
People with no qualifications, who could not even speak cogently, who could only speak the lines they'd memorized, praising Trump as though he were a heathen god that had to be appeased with slavish rhetoric.
I like that. I really love that that comparison. It's the bar scene in Star Wars. Now, I'm a dork. That's probably why I like it so much. And of course, secondly, is the overall point. Here you had this so-called reputable news network. I know, news, right? Look, here's the thing. Those of you who are watching, you already know all this. But there are people out there that still believe Fox News is a legitimate network. They really, really do. And that's why it's important, because I reach a small group of people. If one of these videos goes viral, and there's a lot of people watching, maybe a lot of people who watch Fox News, they might realize, oh, that seed of doubt starts to take root in their minds. And they maybe realize that it turns out Fox News is a propaganda channel that lies to me all the time. That's why it's important. Nonetheless, so now the realization that this so-called news network is filled with insane people is always fun. It's always fun when people who are on the channel go, oh, right, I'm surrounded by nuts. Yikes. Now, I hate to break it to Ralph, okay, but it turns out, yes, you were always one of the freaks. Fox News was designed this way. It was designed to be Republican propaganda. And now, I know that they tried to, and this is under Roger Ailes, where they would put a couple of token liberals on and say, oh, no, we're fair and balanced, right? Well, they don't use that tagline anymore, but that's what they originally built it as. And so they could build out this very conservative propaganda network, but then point at the liberal hosts and be like, that guy's a lib. We're totally fair. See, we're presenting both sides. And that is, of course, the major flaw here, and the major problem with Fox News in general is that they misrepresent themselves as a balanced network. And even as they tried to do that, they tried to do some straight news hours. Well, now, at least under the Trump administration and afterwards, they started to get rid of some of those straight news. So now, here's the thing. Let me go through more of this here. Now, as I said before, Fox News designed to be conservative propaganda, right? And during the Republican administration, it actually ends up being state TV. It's not the bar in Star Wars. It's actually the North Korean news agency. That's what it's more like. Or, you know, there's no war in Ba Sing Se, right? Nice Avatar reference here. But when Democrats are into power, well, you see the obvious shift. So then they take a more adversarial role. They focus on, of course, the failures, nonsense scandals, Hunter Biden, Obama's tan suit, all of that. Now, there was plenty of coverage on that stuff. Not a lot of coverage on Obama's drone strikes, though, which is interesting because I think those drone strikes are way more heinous than that suit. But no, they didn't talk about that because they agree with that policy. That's a hawkish foreign policy, and they like hawkish foreign policy. That is, of course, until Donald Trump said, oh, I don't like the hawkish foreign policy. We should probably end these wars. And then they're like, oh, well, yeah, maybe Donald Trump, I think, makes a pretty good point. That maybe we shouldn't waste time in Afghanistan. Oh, yeah. Not like Obama. So understand what that's about, okay? And so Fox News, again, agrees with the Republicans, agrees with conservative policy, with the Republican administrations, and is nothing more than propaganda. And what they do to keep their audience is feed them with outrage porn instead of actually informing them. And let's be honest, all media, of course, does that to some extent because we live in capitalism. Capitalism, of course, makes news, covering news into a business. And of course, what gets more clicks, what gets more engagement? Outrage. Outrage. And for conservatives, disgust. And so what gets the most engagement from the conservative audience now is pro-Trump programming on Fox. After Fox News' ratings fell sharply, according to an excerpt from the New York Times, following an early call on election night for Biden, the news network got rid of their news and put emphasis on right-wing commentary. According to the Times, as I said, its new opinion shows at 7 and 11, with segments that lament cancel culture and attack Mr. Biden, are attracting bigger audiences than the newscasts that they replaced. So understand that right there points out that it's a business. And in order to have business, they pander to an audience that has become more radicalized. That's where they make their money. And it works. It works. It works. Fox News remains a financial juggernaut for the Murdoch empire, which is expected to earn record advertising revenue this year. So if you're wondering why they keep bringing on the freaks, this is why. Capitalism. All right, go to a Capitol Rioter. Conservatives are still crying about Hillary Clinton. Oh, they are. Oh, it's sad. I try to forget that Hillary Clinton exists. I mean, the last reference I made was a quick one, the fact that she was actually helping organize flights to get people out of Afghanistan, and I thought that was kind of based. But that was it. Otherwise, I criticized Hillary Clinton all the freaking time. But they can't shut up about her. They also can't shut up about Hunter Biden and his laptop. Every time they try to do an attack on on him, by the way, they make Hunter Biden look better. They make him look like, oh, that's kind of cool. Actually, based. Oh, you support sex workers? Awesome. All right. Anyway, no more tangent. Let's go back to chair throwing. Now, we've heard a lot of excuses from Capitol rioters for their behavior on January 6th. So one was famously defending the muffins, the muffin defender, Mr. Jacob Chansley, the Q shaman or QAnon shaman. Oh no, I was just defending the muffins. They were going to come after the muffins. And I stood stalwart and I sang my shaman songs in order to boost people's spirit and maybe alleviate their hunger because, muffins. Another was an accidental tourist. Somehow he just got lost and ended up in this mob of, other pro-Trumpers holding a Confederate flag. I don't know how it got here. I don't know. I'm so confused. Where am I? Why am I here? Another had no idea he was even in the Capitol building. He thought he was at the White House. Another believed that they just let him in, like that he was allowed to be there. Like, what are you talking about? I thought I was allowed to smash windows and smear feces all over the place in this building. What's going on? Another was like, oh, I just came in to see the historical art while holding a Confederate flag. Bad excuses all around. Terrible. Well, I have another one. And this one is actually part of a guilty plea. Apparently, the former tech company CEO, Bradley Ruxdales, pleaded guilty for being at the Capitol and throwing a chair. So now he threw a chair at police officers during the Capitol insurrection, but said, well, I wasn't really aiming it at anybody. So it's not like I was actually throwing a chair to hurt somebody. I was just throwing a chair in a general direction. And if it hits somebody, well, that's not my fault. Not my fault at all. What are you talking about? Now, Ruxdale, who was fired as CEO of the Congencia in the wake of the insurrection, faces about 6 months in prison after pleading guilty to a misdemeanor charge of parading, demonstrating, or picketing inside a Capitol building. So now, 6 months, they dropped the rest of the charges because of this guilty plea. Here's what he said to District Judge Carl J. Nichols during his plea hearing. Quote, I was very careful when I was with the chair to make sure that nobody was within striking distance. So you pick up a chair and you're throwing it, but you don't want to hit anybody. Well, then what would be the point of picking up a chair? That doesn't make any sense. WUSA Channel 9 investigative reporter Scott McFarlane, who attended that plea hearing, reported that Ruxdales was taken to ground by an officer near the defensive line of police on January 6th. Per plea agreement, Ruxdales will be asked to formally acknowledge that he knew he did not have permission to be in the Capitol on January 6th. Ruxdales acknowledges throwing a chair on January 6th, but tells the judge he didn't throw it at any individual and argues that he was careful with it. Judge instructs him that such an argument is more relevant at sentencing than not a plea hearing. So, yeah, not only is it a bad excuse, but he's like, why are you saying that now? This is just a plea hearing. Why don't you tell me that at sentencing? But yes, I did throw a chair, but I didn't aim it at anybody, but, so it's okay. No, you don't get any credit for that. No cookies for you, sir. You weren't there and you weren't supposed to be. I'm sorry, you were there and you weren't supposed to be. And of course, he realized that back on earlier in January, actually, he had said, quote, in a moment of extremely poor judgment following the January 6th rally in Washington, I followed hundreds of others through an open set of doors, Capitol building, to see what was taking place inside. Yes. I was just checking things out. My decision to enter the Capitol was wrong, and I was deeply regretful to have done so. Without qualification, as a peaceful and law-abiding citizen, I condemn the violence and destruction that took place in Washington. I offer my sincere apologies for my indiscretion, and I deeply regret that my actions have brought embarrassment to my family, colleagues, friends, and fellow countrymen. It was the single worst personal decision of my life. I have no excuse for my actions, and I wish that I could take them back. Yes, because, you got caught. The whole point of you being arrested was the fact that you were not a peaceful and law-abiding citizen. You were actively breaking the law in a violent way. I mean, you were throwing a chair at police. Just saying. Kind of a laughable excuse. Not really buying it. But he and others, and this is what's frustrating about this, he and others have actually gotten some super light sentences. 6 months. 6 months. Now, again, part of that is due to the guilty plea itself. If you go in, you plead guilty, you work with prosecutors, you're going to get a little bit of a lighter sentence with limited jail time. But still, a lot of these insurrectionists also will, not face felony charges. And the result of that, of course, is a couple of different factors, in my opinion. For one, no criminal history. That is really important, and a lot of these people do not have criminal history. They're also white and generally affluent. This guy was a former CEO. You had other people that flew in with private jets, business owners. These were not working class people, and definitely not working class people of color. Majority white. So a lot of that has to do with, of course, why they're getting such light sentences. I have no doubt that if it were a bunch of Black Lives Matter, protesters, well, they'd be dead or sentenced to prison for years. We know that. We know that. So I don't think this is a good thing, honestly, because here you've had more people on the far right that have promised more violence over this and other things. In fact, we're already seeing violence play out in other areas. Anti-maskers, for example, anti-vaxxers attacking school boards. And they're doing so over mask mandates. The government, unfortunately, is still not taking the right-wing, far-right terrorism as seriously as it should. Because that's what this is. And unfortunately, I feel like that's going to have a negative impact in the future. We really should be taking this more seriously and actually handing out serious sentences. And look, maybe there's one thing that I might be missing here. And it could be get some of the lower level people first and use that, maybe any information they know, to get higher level fish. If that's what they're doing, okay, I see the method here. Otherwise, you're just letting people go with very light sentences and basically not allowing that to serve as a deterrence for more right-wing violence. That's just what I'm seeing. All right. Speaking of school boards, let's have a little fun for our last story. With all the Star Wars references today, fun times. All right. I think you're going to love this story. Recently, members of the Henrico School Board in Virginia got pranked with a Simpsons-style meme. And it's pretty funny. Take a look.
Phil McCracken. Phil McCracken. Sook Mahidic. Luke Mahidic. Ophelia McHawk. Ophelia McHawk. Eileen Dover. Eileen Dover. Don Kiddick. Don Kiddick. Wayne Kerr. Wayne Kerr.
I'm sorry. I lose it at Donkey Dick all the time. So, look, let me just tell you, I'm a child. My 7th grade brain thinks this is awesome and hilarious. And shout out to this guy. This is Roscoe D. Cooper III. who's reading these names. This guy's a professional, man. He's trying. He's really trying. And I think maybe he caught on a little bit. Maybe there's a little bit of smirk behind that mask. But he went for it. He went for it. I mean, and by the way, Sukmidik. I think we all remember the classic Colbert line when he read that out. Sukmidik. Oh wow, we've got some Middle Eastern viewers here. Very nice, very nice. No, he tried, and it was funny. I enjoyed it. Credit to him. You know what's good? I would rather see this. Innocent, harmless prank. I leaned over and Phil McCracken. Wanker, Wayne Kerr. I'd rather see that than the crazy anti-maskers and, crazy anti-vaxxers that right now have been plaguing these school boards and attacking people. So it's gotta, we gotta have a little bit of fun here. And that's what this is. These are the classic memes. These are the old school Bart Simpson style stuff, Kind of like what I grew up with. Maybe I'm dating myself a little bit here. But it's fun. All in all, not bad. Good troll. I'd rather see, as I said, something like this instead of crazy anti-maskers just raging. So whoever did this, thanks for the laugh. Appreciate it. That's all. Just fun. Munch Bakuchi. Oh gosh. I remember that one too. Oh, that's good. That's good. Oh, I love it. I love it. So, fun times. Hopefully you enjoyed that story. Got a little bit of fun here. And now, what we're going to do here is we're going to raid in to another channel. Let's see. Let me just take out some trash first. Got to get rid of the garbage. And let's see who we have to raid into. Before we do, thank you, Winchanter, for cheering 20 bits. Appreciate that. There was an Ophelia Macaque. Yes, that was pretty good. Oh, let's. Tyler Hackner with the very kind super chat. We live in late stage capitalist dystopia coupled with state TV. This is true. Very true. Gabby Mathis, thank you for that very kind $5 as well. I do appreciate that. Over here on Twitch, to read into. Let's do a surf raid today. Do that. Jump into there. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Appreciate that. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Consider becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. And follow us on the various platforms. Twitter, Jeff's Politics. Facebook at Jeff Waldorf Show. Don't forget to like there as well. And yeah, have a good one. Thank you all, and we'll see you here tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here. All right, everybody, love you, and remember, change begins with you.
Who's got a hammer?
Give me a break. kicking me out the door.
Amazing.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.